3rd of April 2018, and welcome to Downstream and Drive Day 2018. And yes, the sun is shining down here in Wiltshire, and I'm waiting for Neil, who is actually on a radio interview at the moment. That's Neil Dewson-Smyth, or SgtTCS as we know him. If you're watching the show live, please comment. And if you want to join us on camera and ask Neil a question when he arrives, then please do so. And you can do that by typing guest in the comments. And, well, here we have it. Let's go. Right, okay. And we're on a countdown now as we go 3, 2, 1. I can make that picture disappear. I can bring that there and say, good morning, Neil.
Good morning, Stephen. How are you?
I'm good. Everything's working. First time out. That's good.
How rare.
Right, true. How has your day been so far?
The day so far has been busy. I spent the first hour sat in bed tweeting like crazy, as I made the mistake of picking the phone up and having a look, and then suddenly found myself snared there whilst I started putting some content out. But the joys of a day off, I suppose. So I'm been busy. Then with the activities got going, lots of people are picking up and sharing out the information and the messages and the images, and we've had a radio interview with one of the regional radio stations here up in the Northwest. That was swiftly followed by another radio interview with the big independent broadcaster in Manchester on radio there, Key 103. So we spoke to them, and I've also spoke to one of the national newspapers who've rang me up and wanted to have a word about it as well. So all good so far. Getting the message out. Yeah, but now, of course, the key moment is that we're actually here now on Facebook Live, which is even better. Well, it's a tradition, isn't it? It is. You started this 3 years ago, and we were on Blab. Then last year we were on Smile Time, and this year we're on BLIFbot.tv. So we actually sort of the history of live video is shown through the shows that we've done over the last years, and it's fascinating how much it's evolved. It does grow every year, and I'm just put this link out for Facebook so I can share it on Twitter. That's why I'm a bit distracted. See, don't do live stream broadcasting and even send tweets from the safety of your table in the lounge. Just bear with me. Let's put Don't Stream and Drive in there and the hashtag, and then I'll be right back with you. Yeah, you're okay. Otherwise, I mean, whilst you're doing that, I can put a call out and bring up on screen. There is a thunderclap running today, and that thunderclap, it actually fires at 4 p.m., doesn't it? It does. Yeah, it goes out at 4 today. Traditionally, if in your third year you can say traditionally, I suppose you can. Yeah. It's gone out around about lunchtime, sort of midday. And I thought this year, well, let's just see if we can try and increase the reach a little bit, because at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, everybody starts they're either home, they're on their way home, it's the end of the working day, and that sort of surge in Twitter activity. And see if we can get some increased reach by doing it a little later. Yeah, so half the day is about getting people to go to the thunderclap, and then afterwards it's getting the word out. Yeah, it's pushing the message all day, and the thunderclap will bolster that, hopefully at a peak traffic time. Brilliant. Now, Downstream and Drive Day would not be complete unless there were 3 of us on screen. So welcome, Mr. John Upton. Oh, come along, John. Right, and we can now switch up. So they were on screen. There he is. Good morning, John.
Good morning. Just I was about to come live, the blooming front doorbell went, and it was the Amazon man. But at least it means we've got the parcel and he won't be disturbing us.
True.
And
right.
It was a moment where I thought all the children upstairs, because it's half term, so the children are all off, and I've got all three of them today. And you're doing a radio interview, which was quite unusual because obviously the quality of the voice recording just down the mobile telephone line is pretty poor. Yeah. So one of the radio stations did it via WhatsApp because they said the quality is much better through WhatsApp. So we did that. The other radio company said, I'll speak to you on the telephone, but record yourself speaking about 12 inches away from your mouth, holding your iPhone, and do a voice memo, and then email that voice memo to us. And they're going to edit and cut and change that. But you're thinking, the children are going to come down the stairs? Or
It's strange that we haven't yet sort of settled on one way of doing it. That should all have the different text on it. Say hello to Patricia. Yeah. And good. Life is real.
It definitely is real.
Yeah. As Neil said, traditionally the thunderclap would have gone out at midday, but this year it's going out at 11 a.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. in the UK. So there is time to visit the thunderclap. You'll find the link in the post. If you can go there and you can lend your Twitter account or your Facebook account, then it all helps, doesn't it? Because at the moment, looking at the page, you said you were going to get 250 supporters, but you've actually got 641 at the moment.
Mm-hmm. It's Thunderclap is a pay platform.
Okay, yeah.
And if you get three options, I think: 100 signups, 250 signups, or 500 signups.
Yeah.
And whichever one you choose, if you don't get to that target, your Thunderclap doesn't go out.
Right.
You can short circuit that by paying, and they will then push your Thunderclap out regardless. So in the first year, I thought 100, I'd got, I don't know, maybe 14,000 Twitter followers. I thought, I'm sure I can get 250 people to sign up. And it was hard work to get 250. You really felt like you were badgering and mithering and continually going on about it. But I've set it at 250 ever since. It's always exceeded 250, but that just is a middle ballpark figure that just means that I know that it will go out because I know we'll get past it. And because I do this all myself, anything that I can do that's not going to cost me any money, all the better.
Agreed. And the reach at the moment is 8,121,454 people. It's
massive this year. In no short order, really, or no short... I forget the phrase I'm looking for, but it's down to predominantly. I had huge support from Joel Comm, who brought 900,000 people to it, and he's sat at the top of the thunderous supporters ever since he signed up, which is fantastic support, and that's taking it. I think predominantly that's taking it into the United States, which is fantastic because we need more exposure in the USA. But also 38 of the 43 forces in the UK have all signed up as well, and they bring a considerable social media presence with them. Yeah. So that's really seen the sign-ups and the reach grow exponentially this year. It's been superb.
West Midlands Police, 445,000.
Yeah.
Birmingham updates and Police Scotland.
Yeah, West Midlands Police joined after a little bit of support from Chief Inspector Kerry Blakeman, who's a strong proponent of the police use of social media and live video, actually. Much earlier into the live stream video game than I was, much earlier.
Right, okay. Now, I suppose at this point, we'd best start on Dirtstream and Drive Day itself and the origins of it, first of all.
Well, the origin, there's a gentleman at the College of Policing who has just retired or is about to retire by the name of Nick Keane, and he's been the digital lead for the College of Policing for many years. And about 3 years ago or so, because I think Periscope's just passed its 3rd birthday. I think I've seen stuff on social media about that. It's sort of passed me by. I've been so busy with the campaign. But around about 3 years ago, he dropped a message into a private Facebook group that a number of the communications teams around the country are members of. And he said, there's this new platform that Twitter bought called Periscope. Does anybody know anything about it? Is anybody using it? Has anybody got any thoughts about how they might use it? And being the kind of guy that I am with social media, I sort of thought, well, I'm just going to go straight into that. So I went and had a look and thought, oh, I can see all sorts of opportunities of things that we can use this for in policing. But as I got more and more involved with the platform, I started to notice that people were using it to stream live video whilst they were behind the wheel of the car.
Right.
Now, I work in the control room now. I've been in there for a few years. And prior to that, I was in custody for 7 years on the right side of the desk and the cell doors, obviously. But so I've been away from the day-to-day sort of out on the ground policing for some time, but I had spent 7 years prior to that as a traffic officer with Greater Metro Police. And so as soon as I saw this behaviour, I thought, this is crazy. This is really, really dangerous. My road policing head went on. I thought, well, what can I do about that? And the whole thing about Don't Stream and Drive was the fact that the problem exists on social media. And so my belief was that we take it to social media. We don't try and radio, TV, newspaper, leaflets, all those kind of things can impact upon something, but let's take it to the heart of where the problem is, which is social media. So I started pushing the message on social media, and that led to the sort of, how can we sort of consolidate everything I'm doing with Don't Stream and Drive and the hashtag into one awareness day. And that was 2016, the first one, where we sat here all day on Facebook Live, on Blab.
On Blab.
All day, really.
Back then.
Yeah.
Now, distracted driving, Don't Stream and Drive. Why is it important that we don't? The
streaming and driving is one aspect of a whole multitude of activities that drivers can engage in behind the wheel that will distract them from the primary function of keeping their eyes on the road and concentrating on the driving. And so I'm a firm believer that distracted driving is the new road safety challenge that we're not only facing in the UK, but we're facing internationally. And if you look across social media at the number of posts that go out about distracted driving, the dangers of people using their phone for any purpose whilst they're behind the wheel, and it's really easy to find. There's loads of stuff out there that just sort of shows what can happen if you're distracted whilst driving. And as Patricia says there, it only takes a second to kill with a car, and it does. You take your eyes off the road for a few seconds and everything in front of you has changed when you look back up. And if you're not in a position to respond, it can be catastrophic. So one of the examples I use is drink drive, because the drink driving legislation and the campaigning against drink drive has been on the go now for 50 years in the UK.
Wow. And
although we are massively reduced on the number of people who drink drive on a day-to-day basis and a regular basis, it's a behaviour and that still goes on and still forms one of the fatal four. So we've done 50 years of campaigning, but it's still one of the primary four causes of what kills people on the road. So I think and believe that distracted driving is, as I said, is the new road safety challenge, and we've got an opportunity to get in really early with this and really start shoving the message home, and try and influence people's behaviour and change their behaviour behind the wheel, which is what the campaign's all about, hopefully.
Indeed. And this is the awareness day. And just to remind everybody, the Thunderclap goes out at 4 p.m. today. So you do have a chance to add your Twitter account or Facebook account and get the message out on Don't Stream and Drive Day itself.
They do.
Okay, let's go through some basic things. And I suppose the first question I've got is visual distraction when driving.
Yeah. It's essentially with people who are live streaming. If we talk about Periscope in particular, because that makes it fairly simple and straightforward, but it would be the same with Facebook Live if somebody was broadcasting Facebook Live whilst they were driving, is that obviously it doesn't take a great deal of common sense for people to understand that their eyes should be on the road and should be looking ahead and peripherally at everything that's going on around them. And the visual distraction that happens with streaming and driving is the user, the broadcaster, is often either pointing the camera down the road to show where they're going, or they're pointing the camera at themselves as they drive. Periscope allows the viewers to inject comments into that broadcast, which the broadcaster can then read and respond to. So what happens is the visual distraction is it's taking their eyes off the road and looking at the phone. And over the years of me watching people engage in this behavior, even if they're not talking and even if they're not reading any comments, or there are no comments coming through whatsoever, if I was that person now on the screen, they're driving and they're looking ahead, and then they look at the phone, and then they look back at the phone, and it's this constant sort of if it was somebody with a knife, if somebody's got a knife and police officers detect that they're hiding something because they keep doing confidence checks, they keep putting their hand to the pocket. Is it still there? Is it still there? So somebody's got a knife in their pocket and they're in custody. They've got something they don't want us to have. They keep putting their hand to it. And we sort of become attuned to that in the police. We think confidence checks, what are they doing? There's something in that pocket. They're up to something. It's the same sort of thing with people's eyes. It's this confidence check that they are looking at the screen all the time in case they get a comment that they don't want to miss. And so that visual distraction, taking their eyes off the road. And we did that, the study that Aviva supported last year, where we showed that if you take your eyes off the road, look at the phone, read a comment, come back, regain situational awareness, and it's a very quick look, read, and look back. It takes 5 seconds. At 40 miles an hour, that's the length of a football pitch blindfolded.
Yeah, and you might as well be driving blindfolded.
Exactly. It's really, really, and it's driving that home to people, avoiding the pun, obviously driving it home, but bringing it home to people how dangerous it is.
Right, and we've been joined by Penny Wint, and Penny says, if I hadn't listened and followed Neil, I might have been dead last Tuesday. So I can't thank Neil enough.
Oh, yo, she's had a horrific crash, Penny, just recently, but she's walked away from it, which is good. But there's all the pain and mess that she's got to sort out with it now, which is just, horrid. But she's okay. That's the main thing. So
good. And Patricia's saying driving is a privilege, not a right. Only drive when fully alert.
That's right. That's something that has always been a mantra within traffic police officers, is that it is a privilege and not a right. And I mean, from my own personal perspective, I think the ability to take the privilege of being able to drive away from people is viewed as quite a serious step. And I'm almost of the belief that it should almost be the other way round. Sort of, it should be quite commonplace to just say, okay, you're off the road. And sometimes I don't think when we disqualify people, we disqualify them for anywhere near long enough. There are those who are disqualified and will just continue to drive anyway, and those are the people that end up in prison. But I do believe that, what's the best example I can give you? Go back to drink drive. If we look at drink drive and say, if you have a couple of pints and then you drive down the road and you stop by the police and you blow just over the limit, say you blow 50 and the limit is 35. So the process is you're arrested, you get taken to the custody suite, you get booked into the system, you have all your property taken off you, you have all your laces taken from your shoes and the belt from your trousers and your watch, and everything is taken from you. For most people, is completely humiliating. They then put you on the breathalyzer machine to see what your reading will be for court. And then you're kept in custody until you're below the limit. Then you're charged with the offence and you're bailed to court. You go to court, you face a minimum 12-month ban, a fine, court costs, victim surcharge, and so on. Now, the study by TRL, the Transport Research Laboratory, in 2002 showed that your reaction times whilst using a phone, handheld or hands-free, is increased more using those devices than it is if you're driving at the drink drive limit of 35.
Okay.
So if you're using a phone whilst you're driving, even with the recent increase, which doubled the penalty, you currently get 6 points on your driving license and a £200 fine. But you think, hang on a minute, the mobile phone increases the driver's reaction time more than the drink driver, but the penalty difference and the consequences are quite starkly different. And so I still personally firmly believe that the mobile phone offences, even with the recent doubling in March last year, is still not enough. I still think that it needs to at least mirror the drink driving to show how important and how dangerous it is. And then we might start getting somewhere, but there could be an argument, I suppose, that, all right, well, has drink driving been eradicated by the penalty that it's imposed? No. Has it significantly reduced from the 1960s when it started? Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, it's changed our way of life, basically, because it's just not worth it. First of all, we've accepted now that it's common sense.
Yeah.
And do we have the same battle with streaming and driving?
Yeah, it was. I think with drink drive, it was almost a way of life, wasn't it? Yeah. And people didn't see it as an issue. And I think the thing with streaming and driving and distracted driving is it's about people don't see it as an issue. And in some regards, I think that's the legislation is to blame, because the legislation has conditioned people to think that hands-free is okay. But hands-free has been proven to be distracting. So they've sort of been conditioned into this behavior to think it's okay. So it's then difficult for them to backtrack from it. But I also just think that it's an increasing problem that even when people recognize the dangers, they still carry on and engage in that behavior anyway. There was a chap I caught on Periscope just recently. And
hello, can you hear me? Can't see anybody.
Sorry.
I'm on the mobile phone.
Just a moment, this is live video.
Can't see anything, can't hear anything.
Well, can you see me, Peter?
I think I'm going to have to give up.
Right, okay.
So I'll probably get back to you. Not seeing a thing.
Okay.
Okay.
Right, okay. That was our friend Peter, who's in Aberdeen on mobile, stationary on mobile.
Yes. And he was buckled up.
Oh yeah. Hopefully, we'll be join us.
He doesn't spill his coffee.
I
mean, it's bizarre, isn't it? I highlighted somebody on social media this morning, and the video has since been deleted. But they were live at the time, so I just shared it straight out and said, "Here's, this is a potential killer on our roads." And it might seem harsh to sort of say that about somebody, but I mean, you could argue that every time you get behind the steering wheel of a car, you're a potential killer. But if you're taking care and you're driving to the rules and the regulations and giving the driving your full attention, well, then you're much less likely to be in that situation. But he was live streaming video. He couldn't leave the phone alone. He kept looking at it, He had hardly any viewers, if any at all. So he wasn't getting any comments to respond to. But he kept looking and he kept looking and he kept looking. And then he was eating. And he'd got something in his hand. So he's eating and driving and looking at his phone. And I went out and retweeted it and put the message out there, went back into it, at which point he's driving, looking at his phone. He's got a bottle in this hand, and this hand's taking the top off, and he's drinking from it. So he's got no hands on the steering wheel whatsoever. So he's steering with his knees, probably. Oh, God. And I thought, crikey, this fella's nuts. And I went back and did something else on Twitter. And when I went back to the broadcast, he was having a fag. And it's got tragedy written all over it, and completely oblivious to how dangerous it is.
It's stupid. It's a good word, I think.
Yeah.
Irresponsible, because it's not. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing to come back to, is that if you are streaming and driving, you're not just endangering yourself, are you?
No, you're endangering every other road user. We've had. It's one of those things that's really difficult for the police to detect. If we have a collision where we deal with a fatality, well, then we go to town on every single piece of evidence that we can get our hands on, and we'll do very detailed and thorough examination of mobile phones to find out what happened and what was in use at the time, and did that potentially affect the outcome of the collision. Excuse me. If somebody just drifts across the centre line and the two cars sort of collide and slide down the road a bit, and there's no major injuries, and the police arrive on the scene and say, well, okay, you crossed the line, and they're saying you didn't, and we've got no other evidence and no dash cam footage or anything else to sort of support it, we may well end up in this situation where we say, we'll just leave it to insurance companies, because you've got conflicting accounts. They can all argue it out themselves, and we can't prove any offences. But you have to ask, what made the person drift over the centre line in the first place? Mm-hmm. Inattention, probably, but what caused that inattention? Were they rooting around in the footwell because they dropped their sweet or whatever it happened to be, or are they reaching into the glove box to get something, or are they messing with the sat nav, or doing something fancy with their infotainment system and twiddling knobs and buttons and stuff on a big fancy screen in the car? Or are they sending a text message on the phone, engaged in a FaceTime call? That's something that happens. Or streaming and driving, anything like that, these distractions are coming about.
Yeah, and Patricia is saying that sensitivity training is needed. A lot of people seem clueless.
Yeah, I think sensitivity is a good word there, because there was within the sort of live stream stroke Snapchat community a while back, there was a big fallout by quite a number of people, because they felt that some people who were being challenged about their behavior whilst they were live streaming and driving was akin to bullying, and they were being openly ridiculed and picked on because of what they were doing. And I can understand that. And so one of the things that I try to do is be sensitive about the way that I approach it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll just push it out there. Sometimes I'll just send them a message and say, I've just seen this broadcast, do you understand how dangerous it really is? Other times I've gone live myself on Periscope and tagged them into the broadcast and done a personal appeal to them and said, I want you to understand that I'm talking to you directly because I want you to understand how dangerous this behavior is. But I think sensitivity is important, because I think sometimes you sort of, if you bash people with a big stick about it, they're not going to thank you for it. You need to try and it's one of those things, isn't it? It's same with policing all the time. Alongside enforcement comes education, and that can often be just words of advice. I can remember being stopped by a traffic. I was cycling back from Cubs, and I came out of the park down this little track out onto the road, and thought I'll cycle home down the road because at least I've got the street lights. Whereas down the cinder path through the park, it was pitch black. So I cycled down the road, and it was only about a quarter of a mile to get home. And this traffic man in his Ford Capri, 2.8 injection Ford Capri, pulled alongside me and stopped me and asked me what I was doing and told me off for not having lights on my bike. Then sent me home on foot. Yeah. Never did it again. Advice is and education is a really powerful tool. So, you know, we can do that through the power of social media these days. We can try and educate people through social media.
And that's the point of today. Don't stream and drive. Day 2018, April 3rd. And as I said, the thunderclap actually goes out at 11 a.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. in the UK. I've just posted the link again. If you can support with your Twitter account or your Facebook, then please do. It doesn't cost anything, just takes a couple of minutes to do it. And it gets the message out and spreads awareness of the fact that streaming and driving is most definitely a bad idea.
It's definitely a bad idea.
And you can use your Tumblr account as well, this year.
You can, yeah. I must admit, I've not got a Tumblr account. You know,
I have. It has 0 friends.
I find that very hard to believe, John.
Well, I only opened it last week, and I only opened it because I wanted to read a particular article, and you couldn't unless you were a Tumblr member. And then it was a very disappointing article as well.
Well.
Right.
Such is life.
Right, so question then. I'll take Teresa's comments in a moment. Is it legal to use hands-free in a car?
If we're talking about the UK, which is where we are, obviously, well, then hands-free use of a mobile phone in the car is completely legal. So if you've got a Bluetooth headset or you've got a Bluetooth kit in the car, either built-in or aftermarket, that connects to your phone, and you can use your phone whilst you're driving without touching and hand-holding the phone, well, then it's perfectly legal. There's no problem with that. In fact, no, I won't say there's no problem with that. I'll say it's perfectly legal. What I would go on to say is that it's massively distracting, whether it's hands-free or handheld, and we only have to look at the case recently that went through court, the M1 at Newport Pagnell, where 8 people were killed.
Right.
And the truck driver that actually created the collision, he caused the collision. He wasn't the sort of primary reason why it all went wrong, but he was driving in lane 1 at 56 miles an hour on cruise control, and he'd been engaged in a hands-free phone call for over an hour with another truck driver. And so, although he was completely legal in the fact that he wasn't committing the mobile phone offence, his attention wasn't as focused as it should have been. And as a result, he didn't swerve, he didn't brake, he didn't slow down in any way whatsoever. And he ploughed into the back of a minibus and crushed that between himself and another HGV and killed 8 people. So we can't have a starker lesson there for people to realise that hands-free distracts. His defence team called it, he was suffering from inattentional blindness.
What's that?
I don't know what that means, other than the fact that it was distracted driving. And it sounded more like a term used to soften the consequences of what he was actually engaged in. But hands-free is legal, but I would always urge people away from hands-free. My car has a head unit in it that will connect to my phone. It connects to my phone, and more often than not, before I set off, I set it to play some music. It's normally music I've downloaded as opposed to stuff that I'm streaming. Yeah. But it plays music that I've downloaded, and I don't touch it for the rest of the journey until I get to the other end. But if somebody rings me on the phone whilst I'm driving, well, then I ignore it. Or if I answer it, because it's hands-free, I answer it and say, I'm driving, I'm pulling over, wait a minute, and then I don't say anything else until I'm pulled over and stopped at the side of the road, or I'm driving, I'll call you back. Because there's a vast difference between a phone call that comes through on your hands-free car kit that says, hello, where are you? Oh, I'm just, I'm 10 minutes away. All right, see you in a minute, bye. And an hour-long conversation with one of your truck mates because you're on the motorway and you're bored, so you just want somebody to talk to, or, which is easy now that we've got unlimited minutes on our mobile phones, it doesn't cost us, does it? Or that sort of half-an-hour call that you're trying to negotiate business and conduct business whilst you're driving to your next client.
And that's the thing. We're becoming more and more using the cars as a mobile office.
Absolutely.
And sorry.
I think there's an awful lot of companies who have a mobile workforce who now need to start implementing. We've become used to having a phone, haven't we? And we've come used to having this technology in our cars, and we've become used to the convenience that brings. And the efficiency that it brings, particularly in the working environment, where you say, well, okay, whilst you drive from point A to point B, that would previously have been 2 hours out of your working day, whereas now you can spend 2 hours working whilst you're en route by taking phone calls and conducting business whilst you drive. And you think, how can I put, I don't know, can you sit at your desk and operate a computer whilst juggling 3 balls? You can't.
I've got to say, no, I can't. Well, first of all, I can't juggle the 3 balls, but I take you keep multitasking whilst driving.
Yeah,
it's leaving yourself open to distracted driving, isn't it?
Yeah. I did a vlog for Don't Stream and Drive. I'm just sort of experimenting with video work and pulling it all together in vlog type content, in addition to the sort of 31 days live stuff that I do every day, which is your responsibility, Mr. Upton. You set me off down that path. One of the things I did is I had
21 now.
I was 237 yesterday.
Wow.
Which is, there've been a couple of slip-ups here and there, but otherwise I'm on 237. But it was seeing you do 31 days live sensibly for 31 days that set me down that track. But it's been good for me, so I'm grateful. Where were we? I've been distracted now. See
what happens? Quite innocent.
Just distracted.
And you've lost the thread, and your eyes are not on the road. And
absolutely, it's a car crash, isn't it?
It used to be back in the days of Blab. I think we're quite safe on BLIFe.
Yeah.
So it is legal. This is Don't Stream and Drive Day 2018. There is still time to help on the Thunderclap. The link is in the comments. And Patricia is saying hands-free does not allow for negligence.
That's right.
And that sums up what you were saying, Neil.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Now I might throw you a curve on this one, but I'm going to try anyway because I did a bit of research. ROSPA. First of all, can you explain who ROSPA are and how they get involved?
Yeah, ROSPA are the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents, and unless I'm mistaken, I do believe that they used to be based in Birmingham.
They were in ACOC Screen until about 2 years ago.
Right, there you go. Yeah. And my first association with ROSPA, believe it or not, was when I was 16. Well, no, probably 18. because I left college having realised that fixing cars was not the future career for me. So I left college and I went to work for the post office because if I wasn't going to be at college, I needed a job. So I went and I was a postman. And I was only on foot and on a bike for about 12 months or so. And then I started driving the vans for them. And when you drove the vans for the post office, you got to a certain point where I think if you got to 2 years, you got a little badge that went on your post office uniform that had a number 2 on it, and it was from ROSPA, and it was because you'd had no accidents. And so the post office used to award these sort of badges.
Right.
But since then, ROSPA have got involved with the campaign, and they support it through the thunderclap and push messages out there for me as well. And they're, enthusiastic, I think would be the best word, or committed, even better, to ensuring that the occurrence of accidents is reduced through raising awareness about such things. So they've always been very keen to get behind the campaign and support it, which I'm grateful for.
Brilliant. And you've got the support of majority of UK police forces this year.
We have done exceptionally well this year. I think a lot of that is down to officers across the country who encourage their own force to get involved, or ask their own force why they aren't involved, and then it ends up with a few messages and, wasn't sure, what's this about, and then they sign up and support, which has been great. And I think we've got 38 of the 43 forces signed up, which has really massively increased the reach this year. It's been superb.
Right. Right. Okay. Now, this is not just a UK problem, is it? This is an international problem.
It's definitely an international problem. I mean, some of the first broadcasts that I ever really picked up on and started to notice were in the USA. And it's still very, very prevalent over there as much as it is over here. And I have some Google alert email things that come through for me around distracted driving and mobile phone use and collisions with mobile phones. And America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, India, South Africa are all places where news stories are coming from, showing that collisions and serious injuries and deaths have occurred because of distracted driving and streaming.
I just noticed this morning there's a campaign which I quite like the title of, and I think it hits the point home. There's a campaign starting in Arkansas, runs throughout April, and it's called "You Drive, You Text, You Pay."
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So
I'll have to correct you there just to make sure that the people of Arkansas don't get upset that you called it Arkansas.
Sorry. Okay, I can go with that.
The first time I went to the States.
It took me a long time to realise that was Arkansas.
Today's blooper. All right. Apologies to Patricia. Right. And you come up with an acronym for today as well, which I'm just going to bring up on screen if I can get to it. And that's it. I'll bring it full screen. It's called SMART. Which is...
That's something that came up last year, and I just sat thinking, what can, because Don't Stream and Drive runs all year round, but it has this real sort of heightened push of activity in the run-up to the Don't Stream and Drive day, and then on the day itself. But throughout the year, I look at other ways that I can sort of try and bring people's attention to the dangers of any sort of distracted driving. This was more just to do with people using their phone whilst they're in the car, but it fits and dovetails with Don't Stream and Drive as well. And it's just sort of using SMART to sort of give people a thought of what they can do. So you switch your phone off, make your journey, arrive alive, and then reactivate and talk later. Phone SMART came out just sort of very, very shortly before, which I was unaware of at the time, but the RAC ran a campaign then that became Be Phone Smart. And they use that hashtag, and I've got a campaign going with Be Phone Smart. And so part of my work with Phone Smart sort of linked into theirs really then. And they've got a Twitter account and a web page all about being phone smart and being sensible about the use of your phone whilst you're in the driving environment. Okay. But I think it's a bit sort of, it's not a one size fits all solution. Mm-hmm. And so there's a company in North Wales called Solon, and they sent me as a something to just look at and see what I thought, which is like I think they call it an RF pocket, and it's like a little sort of fabric pocket with a Velcro lid, and you put your phone in it, close it, and it cuts off your mobile signal, your data connection, everything. So your phone is completely and utterly isolated. So you put it in there while you're driving, and it is not going to distract you because it won't do anything at all. And I can see some great benefits from that. I can also see some complications that can come from that. But it really depends on what works for an individual. I used to sort of put the phone in a clip, and you could see it, but I didn't do anything with it. But I knew, and I know now, that I was distracted by it because I'd still look at it, and if an alert came up, you'd go, oh, it's just a text message from whoever.
Indeed.
And it's so easy. And so I've got into the habit now of that it's out of sight, it's nearby, but it's out of sight and it's face down. So even if I'm driving at night, if it's face up and the screen lights up with an alert, well, then I don't see it because it's face down. And even more so now because it's an iPhone, it's got the driving mode on it, and so it just cuts off all the alerts as well, which does make a difference because it's one of the things I've really noticed with the driving thing on the iPhone is that it cuts all your alerts off. So the one thing that I do notice is that when I'm driving and I'm listening to music through my phone coming through the Bluetooth, it doesn't keep stopping for biddling, ping, and all the alert messages that come through on your phone as well, because they all come through the Bluetooth with it. So you don't enjoy your music as much because you're getting all these alert sounds coming through. So that's a bonus. But now if for whatever reason it hasn't set, or if one of my kids has been messing around with my phone and changing the music, it goes out of I'm not driving mode. Then all the alerts start coming through, and it's intensely irritating and distracting. Oh, yeah. And I hadn't realized how distracting the alert sounds themselves can be until I've done without them. And now they come back in and you go, God, blimey.
You can do the same with a Android phone. Android. Do not disturb on the Android phone. Yeah. And there's a custom mode where you can choose what you do and don't want.
Absolutely. And it's what works for the individual. And I think if an RF pouch and cutting yourself off completely is the step you need to take it. If putting the phone on the passenger seat face down and knowing that you'll leave it alone is all you need to do, fine. If leaving it on but putting it in the glove box or the phone compartment is all you need to do, get on with it. If you have to turn it off and put it in a bag in the boot, it's whatever works for you is good for me, as long as you're not messing with the phone while you're driving. That's the upshot. Yeah,
as you say, one size doesn't fit all, and you find your own solution.
That's right.
What we shouldn't do is stream and drive.
Absolutely.
In addition to sort of streaming and driving, could you talk a bit about the distracted driving and cognitive distractions?
There are three sort of primary: visual, auditory, and cognitory. And the cognitive distraction is something that I talked about on the vlog, where I used the cardboard tube from kitchen roll. And I sit there with this cardboard tube, and it says safe driver across the front of it. And then I get the kitchen roll and I screw it up into a ball and I push it into the tube and say, there's so many different things that you need to be able to drive safely. So you need your observations, your ability to be able to see everything that's going on around you. Then you need your physical control, managing the pedals, the steering, the indicators, and all that sort of stuff. And so we add all the functions that come in, everything that you need to drive, and then fill it, and it's completely full. So it says, well, now you're a safe driver, you've got no distractions whatsoever. And then we say, now you're going to add the mobile phone and live stream video into the equation. So we've got another tissue all screwed up. And when we push that into the end here, something falls off the other end. And it's something that I talked about quite a lot with a lady called Catherine Nibbs, who's a psychologist who looks at distraction and how that all works, and how much cognitive load a person can manage, multitask, before something takes more importance than something else, and it drops into the lesser area of importance. So you can imagine you've got all this stuff in your tube, you push the mobile phone in, which is this cognitive load that you're now going, I've got to look at the phone, I've got to read the comments, I've got to smile, and I've got to look cool because I'm in the car, and all this sort of stuff. And it's your observations that have fell out the other end.
Yeah.
So your observations are now minimized, nowhere near as good, and they are closing in. Your peripheral vision is going like that and becoming very much tunneled, and you're only seeing that immediately in front of you when you glance at it. Some people spend more time looking at the phone and glancing, and then just glancing at the road instead of looking at the road and glancing at the phone. There was a broadcaster, a lady on the M6 last year, I think, and she's driving a van. She's giving away her location. She's giving away the company that she works for. She's giving away the nature of a load and its high value. She's giving away her destination. So we know where she is, you know who she works for, we know what she's carrying, we know where she's going, and we know where she is right now. She recognizes that she can't stop between pickup and delivery because of the high value of the load. And you think, you're putting yourself and your load at risk now. And while she's streaming and driving, somebody sends her a message that says, don't be streaming and driving. And she's looking at the phone and she says, yeah, well, it's in my peripheral. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think, how can you possibly accept that putting that huge responsibility of your own safety and that of everybody else on the road around you on the motorway, and you say, well, I'll just sort of push that to one side and put it in my peripheral vision? No. And so this cognitive distraction just means that there's only so much information that your brain can process safely. And so if you're driving and you start multitasking and doing other things that are completely unnecessary for safe driving, well, then part of those skills that you've got to ensure that you do drive safely are falling off the other end whilst you take on this other mental burden.
Understood. Right. To everybody's watching, thank you. If you are enjoying the show, the big thing that you could do, and we're not afraid of saying this today, is if you share the show, please, because then we reach a wider audience. And Patricia's saying we cannot process text and road conditions at the same time.
And that's exactly what we've been saying. There's this thing, isn't there, about women can multitask and men can't.
There is,
and it's one of these things that people say all the time. And I've got a slide or a Twitter image that I use every now and again. And if I get it on my phone here, it probably won't show up on your screen. But
it might do.
I don't think it was the one that I sent. One of the ones that I sent to you. Let's just have a quick scan. I've got so many road safety messages on my phone.
Wait, are you checking, Neil? I'll just...
there it is.
Thank you, Patricia, for all the comments. And this is what we love about live video, is when All right. Okay, we're going full screen now. You want to talk about that?
There you go. That men can't multitask. And when it comes to driving, neither can women.
All right.
And I think it's sort of a tongue-in-cheek sort of acceptance to the fact that, you know, I don't know the geography behind it or the evidence behind it, if there is any, but the common acceptance that women can multitask and men can't. But ultimately, when it comes to driving, there's only so many. There's an awful lot going on. It's this really complex blend of hand, eye, foot coordination and so much stuff going on that you can't afford to add anything else in there, because if you do, the other primary functions are going to suffer, and that leads to collisions and all sorts of problems for yourself or other road users.
Yeah, as often happens when you actually concentrate on a single thought, as we are doing with Stream and Drive today. It's just come to me, it just occurred to me, why isn't this taught within the driving tests?
I think, I don't know, but I think because it's not yet considered to be as important as it should be, or perhaps as dangerous as it is. And so the driving test has recently gone through some changes. They've tried to bring it more in line with modern driving techniques and styles. One of those, which I've sort of quite openly criticised, which is that parking offside to curb, facing oncoming traffic. And there's a number of scenarios that they might use, and that is just one of them, where they may test and examine the candidate on pulling to the offside, parking, waiting, reversing a short distance, and then pulling out again and rejoining the traffic. Yet the highway code says, don't park facing oncoming traffic.
All right.
So we're examining on something and testing new driver candidates on something that the highway code says don't do. Doesn't make sense to me.
No, it doesn't. No.
But I think there's it's probably beyond my, well, I don't know. It might be beyond my capability or my my powers to be able to get that sort of behavior change within sort of national driving standards. But but you never know that the people who are able to make those changes, who bring these things about and may become aware of the campaign and may become aware of the dangers of mobile phone use and start looking at how they might introduce that into any driving test. I would welcome that, obviously.
See, that's just brainstorming. This is what we should do. We should come on Don't Stream and Drive Day, and we should brainstorm.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm fast running out of topics I had on my agenda, but we'd like to talk a moment about dash cams.
Dash cams, yeah. Really popular part of the driving culture now, aren't they?
Oh yeah.
And you can have forward-facing cameras and rear-facing cameras, and one in the back and one in the front, or you have one in the front that faces both ways. And motorcyclists are using GoPros attached to their helmets, or cyclists. There was one cyclist on YouTube I saw the other day who appeared to have a camera on his helmet and one on the front of his bike and one on the back of his bike pointing the other way, and he's doing these compilation videos of everything that's going wrong on the roads when he cycles in London. Every car is a potential witness these days, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Whether it's a passenger holding a phone and recording something that's going on in front of you, or whether it's a dash cam recording your driving. And you think, we used to say that when you drove down the motorway and there was a police car parked on one of those observation platforms, that everybody slowed down and they all drove at 70 miles an hour, and they got about quarter of a mile, half a mile past where the police car was parked on the platform, and then all sped back up again.
Yep.
And there's a little bubble of conformity, as we used to call it.
Yeah. Okay.
There's always this bubble of conformity around a police car. And I think it's that bubble of conformity is increasing, but people aren't thinking about it because so many cars have got dash cams in them. So people are doing some really foolish things in front of them, thinking, well, and they're being aggressive and in their manner and style of driving and doing crazy things and making poor overtakes and thinking, well, nobody's looking at that and there's no evidence to show that I've done it. And yet it's been caught on the dash cam. And prosecutions are starting to come out of dash cam footage now. Operation Snap, run in Wales by Go Safe Cymru, has been running for quite a while now and doing very well. My own force will accept dashcam submissions and we'll look at it and review whether it's sufficient quality to prosecute. It's not easy, and some people think just a screenshot of something is more than enough, and you think, well, no, it's not, as far as the court is concerned. And a lot of people will argue, they say, well, using your phone in a cradle, live streaming video whilst you're driving is no different to a dash cam. And I would say, in some regards, yeah, you're right. But in other regards, I'd say no, because as we know, if you're on Periscope, there's interaction, which comes with that. You've also got the screen that you can look at. And so drivers are drawn to look at the screen, whether there's any comments coming through it or not. They're tempted to flip the camera whichever way, to face one way or the other. And so I think dash cams are a massive safety feature that many people have got for their own protection, as much as capturing foolish moments that they experience on a day-to-day basis, because we've all seen bad driving. But as far as using a phone in the same context, I don't think is quite the same when you're live streaming video, because I think there's more distraction there. I'm slightly concerned about the dash cams that have a little screen on them. Unless you can turn it off. I don't have any dash cams myself on my car or my wife's car, but have thought about it, just not quite got there yet. But some of them have got screens on, and I would like to think that those can be turned off while he's driving. So you just put it on and it just comes on automatically and does what it does. I don't particularly think you need a screen to be able to see what your dash cam's recording. But like I say, I've got limited knowledge on those. But I think they're a great safety feature. I just think that if they've got a screen, they could be distracting. And I think if people think that live streaming and driving is just the same as using a dash cam, well, I think they're wrong, because there's far more interaction that comes with that. But dash cams are making every car a witness now, and it's very much a case somebody is watching you, and if you're being an idiot on the road, somebody could well be capturing it now. But people tend to forget they're there, though. When we think about Croker, it was the Polish guy who killed 4 people when he crashed into stationary traffic on the A34, I think, in Newbury. Stretching my memory. But he had dash cam. And the dash cam footage is what was released into the media to show what he was doing. So we've got the dash cam footage that shows the view out of the front of the truck as he hits the traffic. But we've also got in-cab dash cam, which his employers have obviously put in there to protect their drivers and all the rest of it, that shows him like this. Messing with his phone and choosing music tracks and not looking at what he's doing. So people tend to forget they're there. And when they forget they're there, well, then you're either going to be caught by something that you don't realize is there, and it could be the cam in your own vehicle that is catching you out, which it obviously did in his case.
Indeed. This is Downstream and Drive Day 2018 with Neil, SgtTCS as we know him. And right, okay, now is the time to make plans for the rest of the day, I think.
Yeah. The rest of the day, really, it's approaching, well, it's just turned 12 o'clock, hasn't it? small person upstairs. I don't know whether you can hear him or not, but he's getting quite lively and noisy upstairs, which tends to suggest that he needs food. So the chances are that what I'm going to do for the immediate future of today is to organise some lunch and feed the children.
Right.
There's always, at this time of year, actually, there's always chocolate eggs, isn't there? You can always.
Oh yeah.
You can always give them chocolate. And then for the rest of the day, I will be continuing to push the message. I will be continuing to. I'll do some more live video myself later on Periscope. I will be pushing the message out there, encouraging people to get involved. And then the thunderclap goes out at 4:00 this afternoon, British summertime. So that's 3 p.m. GMT, isn't it? Yeah. And that will go out today. And then we'll push the message into the evening, and eventually I will flop in a chair and say, thank you very much, everybody. It's been a great day. This is the reach so far, and draw it to a close for the day.
Okay. Should we get together at 3:30 then? The cap.
Can we get together at 3:30? Yes, we can, because it's half term, so I don't have to go and collect any children. They're already here. Well, yes, that would be good. We could do 3:30 till sort of I don't know, 4:15 or so, and see the thunderclap through, and because we've done that previously, haven't we? So that would be good.
That's tradition.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's do that then. We'll meet back at 3:30.
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
To Penny and Patricia, thank you for supporting today. Have you got any words as we go to lunch then, Neil?
Don't stream and drive. But if you're going to, I think if you're going to use the phone at all, well, then it's never to be used whilst you're behind the wheel. So put it in the phone compartment and get on with the business of driving. Use the phone when you get to where you're going. Put the phone down and just drive.
Right. And so from Neil, John and I will be back at 10:30 Eastern, 3:30 in the UK. Have a safe day until then, and we'll see you at 3:30. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
John, you sign us out. Okay. Right.